Hi, this is Tapcat and welcome back to Factorio. Now, when I left off last time, I said then I kind of realized that what I was doing, it wasn't going to work for creating those green research beakers, the automation packs. And I realized what I was going to have to do is kind of start over. And so what you're seeing here, I spent about 2 hours playing through this. And I'm going to talk you through the whole thing, but I'm playing it back at about 3.5 times its normal speed. And then I'll narrate. So obviously what I wanted to do at first was to start with an area that would be devoted to creating the copper cable that we need, I believe, to go into the inserter arms. And so one of the things I always wrestle with in Factorio is, should I put all of the stages right together? Or like in this case, should I do all of the copper smelting near the mining and stuff? In this instance, I decided to do the latter. So you can see I set up a bunch of electric miners up there, and then we're feeding the plates that get made into these assembling machines, which will in turn create the copper cable. Now, it's no great feat to automate putting the cable on the transporter belt, but that part, I wasn't really worried about that because it is simple. The part I was worried about was the much more complicated aspect of taking all these different components and putting them together into the beakers and then getting those up to the research labs. So just for kind of a placeholder, I set up these iron boxes up here. So I basically created 2 layers of the boxes so that even if one would be completely full, I would essentially have, with 2 layers, 3 boxes each, the potential to hold 6 boxes if it got backed up, which is just thousands upon thousands of those copper cables and way more than I would ever need. So, later, sure, I can go ahead and build a transporter belt, have a few arms loading it on there, and then just take that down to the assembling machines where it'll be put to work. But once I had done just the core thing of getting that production of the cable, set up, I went ahead and came down here and started working on, what I saw as the next phase. So in this instance, that meant putting down more of the new miners. And again, I thought, well, I'm just going to start smelting it's not steel, it's iron plates. Right here. And then we'll feed those plates onto a belt. Now, this is something I iterated on a number of times. And in general, I think I mentioned I spent a couple of hours doing this. I was constantly realizing, I didn't leave myself enough room here, or, I'm not making enough steel plates and I need more mining or more whatever. And so I was constantly having to go back and fiddle with it. But that's the process I think we all go through with Factorio when you're learning it, at least. And I am very much still learning it. So, it took a little bit to get this part up and running just at a basic level, but nothing extreme. So a lot of this, honestly, I guess that's one of the things I kind of find interesting about Factorio is that many of the things you do are very simple if you just take it on its own, as just a discrete action. I just need an assembler here and, I'll make the little gear wheel, or I just, need to smelt iron plates, or I just need this piece or that piece. The problem, or the challenge is a better word, is when you need, a lot of these different things. And it isn't just a question of, how can I say it? It's not a question of just making 1 or 2 things. You have to manage the space and things getting in the way of each other and all that when you're making a much more complex system. So at any rate, what I wanted to do, I mentioned I didn't build the copper all the way down. I set up these iron boxes here that I would feed from. So again, this is a placeholder. And I would just hand carry down, a few thousand of them to start. And then for a little while, I would keep doing that. But again, ultimately, I would just build a belt down. Basically, what I'm trying to get to here is a proof of concept for being able to produce way more than one of those green beakers out of a single assembly machine. So the good news is, I already essentially had something set up that seemed like it was going to do the green circuit board that we need for the inserters. Again, really, I feel like it's the space management of having this stuff close to each other. And this is, again, I just find it fascinating in this game because I constantly go back and forth. It's like, should I just have one area where I have 4 machines that do nothing but put out gear wheels and then somehow try to route them where they're needed? And then another area where I make, the tracks and another, all of these different things. The problem with doing it that way is that you definitely end up in a situation where, to use steel plates as an example, oh my God, you have to route them to so many different places for the different components. And then likewise, a lot of different things use the gears. And so anyway, that kind of constant back and forth, it becomes a never-ending loop in my head as I try to figure out, well, what would be efficient? But the good news is, you can see, we managed to get a decent supply going of the little iron gears. And then, in turn, we started making the transport tracks in real quantity. I mean, this is sped up video, but nonetheless, they were getting pumped out at a really good clip. And I did decide to go ahead and build even an extra thing. I believe, if I remember correctly, part of the issue is I thought, all right, well, I'm feeding enough in there for the transport belts to get made. But I believe I also needed one for the other part. I think I needed it for the inserter. So I started thinking, well, maybe I need more. This was something, by the way, that I should probably do. Really, you can do the math on how long it will take one assembler to make this component. And then likewise, how long okay, let me back up. So let's say you're starting with something like the gear, and you say it takes a half a second to make each gear. And if it takes 1 second, say, to make the transport belt, you can do the math on, well, if I have this many assembling machines that I want to run flat out making the transport belt, here's how much of the assembly machines production I'll use up on making the gears. And especially when you want to use the gears for multiple purposes. So that's something I don't do a lot of. I kind of wing it, and I kind of do it by feel. There's no question you waste time doing that. Now, by the way, right now on the screen, this is an area that I set up, not because I had a specific need, but there was very little stone on this map, and it's way far north. So I just decided that I would set a couple of miners up there and just have it feed stone into the box. And then after I had hundreds and hundreds of stone, I just put a couple of furnaces down and set it up so that it would start making I think it's called a stone brick, and just stockpile some, because when I start doing some of the more, advanced materials that I need, when I start building things that require a little higher end material, I probably should have done that, turning the iron into steel as well, but I haven't. At any rate, having done that, I came back down and started working on this again. And as you could even see, I already had adjusted where I had the transport belt assembly working and all of that. There's honestly, even now, like you'll see by the time we get to the end of this video, I managed to get a decent assembly process going, but when I let it run long enough off camera, you start seeing where it's rickety. And you start seeing, oh, I'm overproducing on some of these things. And then there's others where I'm underproducing. Like, maybe I'm not getting enough ore out here. Or maybe I'm producing too many of this. So now I have assembly, machines that are kind of sitting idle, that kind of thing. And that's where, again, I think that if you do more math, not that, everybody's looking to play math, the game, but if you really want to dial in a world on Factorio, that's probably what you want to do, to be fair, is do some calculations and say, here's what I need for steel plates. Here's what I need for copper and all these different things. Because otherwise you're going to do a lot of building and then a lot of tearing down. And so far I haven't really minded too much doing the tearing down, but I could see over time that would really be challenging. So, down here, as you can see, I had already gotten the circuit board production really early. Like I was pretty surprised how easy that was to set up where it would work. But I hadn't bothered to build any belt for the output or anything, partly because I knew I was nowhere near ready, to send it to where the inserter arms would be made. By the way, I did leave intact, as you can see, I was up there briefly. The area where I, in last video, was making the green science packs, I went ahead and left it all there just so that if I needed to, I could refer to it. I just removed all the power. I let it run for a good while so that there was a big supply of the beakers built up. I didn't do any new technology research or anything. I just decided, hey, I'm gonna let these pile up so that when I do fire up the laboratories again, I know they'll have plenty of material to work on. And but having done that, I went ahead and just shut everything off, turned off the power, and then started working on this. But even at this point in time, there is no technology that's getting worked on. It's just me trying to figure out the assembly line. Basically, getting this assembly line to work and then getting the stone stockpile going up on the northern part of the map. That was really the only thing that mattered to me. One of the things I like about turning off the enemies that come is that I don't really need to worry about time. I don't really need to concern myself with, I'm falling behind or any of that crap. I kind of wanted to play this at a relaxed pace and just take however long it took me, to figure stuff out. And it's amazing to me that even after spending as much time as I did on this little project, to realize like, oi, man, I could maybe not tear it all down and start over, but I could definitely do better. This point is actually a great illustration of that. I realized that I had built a little too close to those other belts. I needed some more room. I needed more, mine machines and stuff. And so I pulled it back. Because I wanted more smelters. That's what it was. It wasn't necessarily more mining machines. I realized I need more of the steel plates. And so I set up, instead of feeding the mine machines directly into the furnaces, I set this belt up instead. And, really wanted to get it going. So, yeah, man, it's just amazing. Now, one bummer is, and I have not set this up yet. As you can see right now, all of those furnaces are begging for coal, and we'll give them some. But I had been thinking, I'm not going to automate delivering the coal here because once we get a little farther in the research, we can upgrade the furnaces and they'll run on electricity. And somebody was nice enough to point out to me in the comments that that's not 100% true. You get the electric furnaces a little later in the game. And they were right. I correctly remembered that in my test game I played before I started recording, I had upgraded my furnaces. But what I had kind of misremembered is that those upgraded ones run on electricity. Later, there's one that does do that. But unfortunately, the ones that you get first off, they still run on coal or some other consumable fuel. They're just faster. So that was kind of a bummer to realize. And I have, like in areas like this, I have kind of packed the furnaces in. And I don't know how easy it will be to automate setting the coal up so that I can feed it to them. And that's doubly true considering like our coal is not conveniently placed. You know, I mentioned the copper was something I just didn't bother to run the transport belt down because I knew it was so doable. You know, it wasn't even a thing. And I was more interested when I was recording this installment in solving the puzzle. You know, how can I set up a production cycle for a significant output of these green science packs, the automation packs? I'm sorry, I looked that name up of this thing 100 times. 10 seconds later, I always forget their exact name. But I know if I say the little green research beakers, I know you know what I mean if you know anything about the game. But at any rate, yeah, that was the part that was really driving me and not so much whether or not I could get the copper down because I knew I could do that. And as you can see, I just kept adding these furnaces. And by the way, that's one of the things that I saw later. I still don't have that balance right. You know, after I stopped recording and all that, I realized I still don't have the right equilibrium as far as, you know, what the mines are feeding to the furnaces and what the furnaces are feeding to the belt and stuff. It doesn't matter in the big picture for the moment because the beakers are still getting produced at full speed. When I say it's not optimized, what I mean is there are components that spend time sitting. And the thing is, like, I'm pretty okay with that in the short term. Long term, I would want to try to straighten that out. But here's the thing. And I would be curious to know whether when you play, like, do you agree or disagree or what? But my feeling is, especially your first time playing, there isn't any point in trying to really go overboard when it comes to optimizing because you don't really know what's coming next most of the time. Even if I look at the tech tree and stuff like that, and in vague terms, I know what's coming, it doesn't mean that I understand what the physical layout I'm ultimately getting to is going to be. So if I spend hours just trying to work out every little kink that I possibly can at this stage, isn't it very likely that all too soon, it just means that when something new comes into the mix, you know, I make the assembly machines faster or the furnaces faster or whatever. Now I've just thrown all that out anyway. And so I just felt like, look, don't worry about getting it perfect. Worry about making it work. Just get it so that you can consistently turn out what you need to produce. Like you can see here, we got to a point where we had a working, you know, production of the inserter arms. I did realize I was going to have to redo the specifics of the transport belt, but you know, slowly but surely, this was all coming together. So, you know, I'm basically good with that. I will say I thought I would need 2 of the assemblers to make inserters. And it became clear once I had the assembly line up and running that I probably didn't need 2. 1 probably would have been enough. But again, I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to leave it alone. Because there may also come a point where if we massively ramp up the number of labs we have and we need more production of this, then I will want the second one. And then I just got to redo it if I've, you know, uprooted everything. So as you can see here, I finally reached a point where now all of the components are being produced. And finally, it's time to start making our ultimate goal here of getting these green beakers to come out. And you know, I was so close I could taste it basically. So that was really nice. One thing I do want to talk about, by the way, is even why I'm making the video the way I am. I mentioned a couple of times that this was something I recorded over a very long period of time. And I didn't know when I started how long it would take me, but I was really sure it would be a whole lot more than a half hour. And I didn't want to turn this into multiple episodes. Like, as it turns out, it would have taken me 4 half-hour episodes, which is a really long time to do a thing. And so, yeah, I thought, well, you know what I'll do is I will, basically what I'm doing now, right? I'll record the whole thing. It takes as long as it takes. And then I'll just watch a sped up version played back and I'll comment over it. The sad part of that is I know at least some of you have enjoyed like listening to me and watch me puzzle it out. And we do lose that in this episode, and I don't like that. In other words, I wouldn't make another episode like this one because ultimately I don't think this is, you know, what I want to do. You know, this isn't the kind of Factorio content I would want to make. And by the way, finally, you can see we got the transport belt sending that stuff up to the labs. And I also am realizing, like, wow, we have so many of these components. Why stop at 3? You know, I can make more. So, but anyway, I want to let you know that I don't know if I'll ever make a Factorio again. I think that I'm going to leave the game for the moment. I do really enjoy it, but I also feel like I've entered a place, like once you really get this aspect of the research tree ramped up, I've started getting access to components that I don't like. I read the description, but I don't get what they mean. So it would be a lot of me sitting there and just trying to understand, wait, what does this type of transport belt do? What does this thing do? And also, by the way, I ended up putting down a number of labs because we are finally generating so many of these, you know, beakers. So we can burn through the research, at least using just the red and green, at a pretty good clip. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I'll have this constant flow of stuff, of items being opened up to me for the first time, and I don't really understand them. I guess what I'm trying to say is my feeling is it's just not viable to do half-hour segments anymore where I can do it, or I can do anything meaningful. And honestly, I think if you're going to play it the way I need to play it, where I'm exploring as I go, I basically would need to stream where I just sit for a few hours and, you know, people who want to watch someone puzzle through it could watch it. Obviously, people who are looking for someone to just do crazy stuff, you know, and they're super advanced and knowledgeable, they would move on. They would bounce off real quick. But, you know, that is a thing that might be interesting to do. But as you know, I've never streamed, at least up to this point in time, and I don't have any solid plans to stream. I have some interest in doing it, but anyway, that's kind of off topic. At this point, as you can see, we have the line moving, and I am just like, hey, we can make more. I have so many of these components, like, let's do more. But as you'll see, these things are also really piling up on the belt. That's why I ended up putting down more laboratories. And I will tell you, like, I don't even know how many I would have to build in order to use this up, because you definitely go a little slower on the research side. Now, one thing that will help is I've only off camera, I did get as far as researching research speed 1, and there are more tiers. Gosh, I think there's like 8 or 9 where you can keep speeding up the research speed. We would burn through more of, these science packs if we did that. And I guess I would, if I do ever pick this game up and start playing again, then I would do that. But anyway, I was happy that I reached a point, like when we ended part 4, my production of the green was so anemic. It was embarrassing. I realized, like, man, I don't know what I was thinking, because this is just nothing compared to what we would need to, really do research. And my whole goal when I started this was, hey, listen, man, I really want to fire this up. And so you can see here, I realized if I'm going to build that many more labs, I probably need more red too. So I went ahead and, built that out a little bit. But, and we're not done, by the way. We're going to add more labs. So yeah, I'm proud that, hey, it took me a couple of hours, but we ended up really feeding the beast here. We really got going and have a much more robust research capability now. And that was the whole purpose of doing this. So at any rate, I hope you've enjoyed watching me really dip my toe into the waters of this game. It's so deep. I mean, this is a game I could put hundreds of hours into. I think that anybody could. Like, if you really get into it, it would take me so long just to finish a first playthrough. Like, if I really tried to go to conclusion of getting a rocket up, I don't even know if I could succeed on my first go, but if I could, it would be such a never-ending learning experience. Very, very, very time-consuming. And I think, with the channel, I really want to play games, and I know there would be very few people who would have the patience to stay with me on that long of a journey in Factorio. But I appreciate those of you who have watched up to this point. I really do. And, particularly any series that gets a little less views than some of the others, it only makes me appreciate the people who do watch it even more. So I do appreciate that. And I appreciate the comments, and, a few of you have left me little tips, nothing too specific, which I also appreciate. Like, letting me figure it out is great. At any rate, I'm going to leave it here. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. I hope we see you next time.